Kyler Murray is in the crosshairs for Dynasty player value this offseason. 3 years in, does he get that big NFL contract as well? Welcome to the Footballguys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, Kyler Murray is high up in the rankings in the top 4, 5, 6 of the position. Where do you stand on Kyler Murray, his progression, and especially his Dynasty value?
This whole week of him not, of him, just defriending the Cardinals is really interesting. It comes at an interesting point where they're probably talking contract extension or thinking about contract extension. It gives me some pause, and I've had pause about Kyler Murray. And if you just listen to the tea leaves, read the tea leaves and just sort of listen to the murmuring that goes on about people that probably are having conversations that they can't actually source.
Is he all in?
Yeah, right. And
you kind of have to be all in. It's kind of a position that you have to be all in.
Right. And
wide receiver, running back, you might be able to be 75% in. Still be okay.
Right. You could show up. You could show up. 10 to
round
3
up
and figure it out.
Great on a curve,
right.
A little bit.
Right.
Quarterback eventually will eat you alive.
Yes. And so there has just been enough of that from enough different places, said enough different times, that gives me enough pause about Kyler Murray to not trust him amongst the elites at the quarterback position. And frankly, he probably deserves it at this point. I mean, he's got 3 seasons in. He's got 3 top 12 finishes in our default scoring, which is FFPC scoring. He's got he's taken a jump each year in yards per attempt, 6.9, 7.1, 7.9. It's a big jump. We're talking from the 20s to 4th. You look at, he was one of the 2 or 3 best deep ball throwers in the league last year, top 4 in terms of yards per attempt on deep balls. And he took a step forward in that. His PFF grade took a step forward. So, I mean, he's progressing along the lines of what you would hope that a franchise quarterback would be. There's just all the other ancillary stuff that's just given me enough pause to kind of side eye it and say that doesn't look right. And I don't know exactly what it is, and I can't put it in a succinct sentence, but it doesn't make me feel warm and cozy like Dak Prescott or like Justin Herbert or Mahomes or Allen. Like, there's just another level of uncertainty. I think he fits interestingly with Lamar Jackson. I don't have these concerns about Lamar Jackson, but I think he has a different set of concerns. I think that they're very similar in terms of how we should value them.
Yeah, I think with Kyler, I just need to see better passing play across the board. And I know you highlighted some of his best traits. One thing that's pretty sticky that I look at is the touchdown rate and interception rate ratio. And the fact that he's really been right around the NFL average in 3 straight years. So in my opinion, you're looking at a middle of the road. Now, is that QB 15, 18, 20, somewhere in there, if you just look at him as a passer. Then obviously he goes much higher with the rushing dynamic. So that helps us from the fantasy front. But we want both. We want it all. And I think the fact that his price is too close to those other guys that I have less passing concerns about, that's my concern. That's my problem. That's my grievance with Kyler Murray, because eventually you got to win both ways, or you got to win more as a passer. 3 seasons and a decent sample size. I mean, we're talking about 1,500 passes. I mean, this is enough. Frankly, this is enough. In the microwave NFL society we are currently in, this is typically the offseason. You see these guys get the new contract. They want to get locked up. They don't want to get into this 5th-year option, dead man walking, lame duck quarterback sort of environment. That's how you go down the road of Kirk Cousins. So this is typically the offseason. Yet I don't have the same confidence level as some of these other quarterbacks. And especially if we were saying Kyler Murray QB 11 in Dynasty, no problems. You wouldn't hear a peep. This show would not really exist. We would talk about something else this week.
Right.
And we would not have mentioned him much at all. But the fact that his price point has consistently been over the past 6 months or even the past year or so, QB 5, 6, 7, high enough. And there's these other terminators that are in that zone. I mean, he just won't move past Dak, right? I mean, Dak is fading down. He's well ahead of guys like Russell Wilson. Matthew Stafford, where he's kind of locked in right now. So I get the rushing. That's super appealing. But with Jalen Hurts, you still got to win, keep, and perform well with the job. The rushing is great, but you need to have the other stuff because it leads to the job security. So he's just too high for me. I think it's a very interesting quarterback market this offseason because people are having highly guys like Trey Lance and Justin Fields, and they're behind Kyler Murray. So if you say I'm moving Kyler Murray down, I don't know if the next men up in that order are the guys that I would move ahead of him. So that's another problem I have with the market.
Well, right. And so I actually, I'm a man without basically a home on the quarterback position, because I'm either, let's take one of the top 3 or 4 guys, and I would include Dak in that. And then you sort of look, there's a whole range of guys that give me a lot of anxiety. And then I come down to the Russell Wilson, Stafford, Watson, Rodgers range, and I'm like, all right, like, listen, if I want to embrace some risk, and they have, again, a variety of different risk profiles in there, I would rather do that, I think, than take a Kyler, or take someone a round or 2 earlier, which is again, and then it's weird, because I have some of these teams where I'm making a concerted effort to get 2 really good quarterbacks, and I'm at my second is Stafford, or my second is Russell Wilson, and I think that there is a value in trading up higher at the position. Is it worth it though, because of the cost, right? No one else is respecting Stafford or Wilson or Rodgers to that extent that maybe you or I are. So it's going to cost you a lot to make a jump to a guy like Herbert across all of those guys. So it's a really interesting, split there, and how the position is altogether. But again, that middle range gives me a lot of pause where Murray is right now.
Didn't you say, was it last week on the show or was it off air, that you said, projecting out a couple of seasons at quarterback, you had a list of like 8? Is that accurate? In terms of like you did like a confidence rating, and you had 8 or 9. It was less than 10. I remember that.
Yeah. So I went through all of the quarterback situations, and I matched the quarterbacks that I felt confident would be the 2023 starters with their current team. And I kicked through. I gave a pass to all the first rounders. There's 5 of them from last year. It was Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Fields, and Mac Jones. I put the 5. So there was 8 other ones. Again, so then it's Stafford, Burrow, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Prescott. I did put Kyler Murray, which is interesting, Lamar Jackson, and I believe that's it. So there is a lot of uncertainty.
It dries up. It
right.
dries up. And when you consider the questions we have right now about the 2021 rookies, where I would argue, Mac Jones is more of a ceiling question, but all the others are legitimate. Where do we stand? This is a critical year to see tremendous progress before we're ready to anoint them at all. So you have 5 of those, and I guess you could throw Davis Mills into that as well. And then you go, well, we're going to have another handful in 2022. And you're saying that is a population that could span a third of the NFL starters across NFL teams? That's a pretty frightening thought. I mean, you might view it as like, oh, the situation is going to be great. We're going to have all these young stud quarterbacks. Well, what if a lot of them flame out? Then we're in traction, right? Because we have older quarterbacks. Brady just left. Breeze, wasn't too far in the rear view. Phillip Rivers gone. We don't have that many stable guys. I'm just thinking back to 2, 3, 4 years ago. I remember one off season I had confidence in about 24, and now we're down to half. And again, first year, second year quarterbacks, man, like I said, we could have 10 of them with first round or high second round pedigree, but projected to start, protected to be their team's leader sooner rather than later. And how many of those work out? How many in 23 and 24 do we feel even decent about?
Yeah. And it's funny because we came into this year looking at and seeing a lot of conversations about, Devy quarterbacks, right? Quarterbacks coming in, hey, this locked in 101, it was Spencer Rattler or the kid.
Well,
from
think about
Clemson.
Trevor Lawrence's value, though. I mean,
Right.
dating back to his freshman season,
Right.
anointed. This
Right.
is why he was built,
Right.
and here he comes.
Yeah.
And he was what, QB deep into the 20s, I believe.
Right.
As a rookie?
Yeah, I think it was like 22, 23.
Marginal,
Yeah,
marginal, even in Superflex. Like
Uh-huh.
you didn't feel like you wanted to put him out there.
No. And so there's so much miss rate, right? There's so much miss rate. And that's the thing. That's a position, especially in Superflex. I think you and I are both coming at this debate with the Superflex angle in mind.
Higher stakes.
Yeah, you can't miss there. You just can't make those mistakes.
Take a first 2 or 3 round startup pick. You can miss maybe in round 6. Like, can I take a flyer as my QB2, but I know I have a backstop of taking another veteran like a Matt Ryan behind him or something like that, where I feel pretty good in a window that if the rookie or the young player doesn't progress in anything. But man, you take a swing. You think you're the smartest guy, and you go out there and you take Trey Lance and stack it with Trevor Lawrence. And again, best case scenario, yep, you got 2 young studs, blue chip. But if you throw air balls on those, like Chad at the end of shows, that is you bang it off the backboard. That's a way to literally just change the career arc for your dynasty team in a hurry. Yeah. And we talk all the time about early picks. It's tough to miss. In the first 4 or 5 rounds, you can't miss on 2 of those. You can't.
No.
You really want to hit on 4 out of the first 6, 5 out of the first 6, something like that, for sure.
Right. And honestly, the difference in someone asked, who would you take, Kyler Murray or Dak? I would take Dak and I wouldn't flinch. But I think the market will give you Dak plus for Kyler.
Right. It may not be a huge plus. It probably wouldn't be a first or anything like that, but you can still get a plus, and that's an important denotation.
Right. If I was on the clock at 104 and it was Allen, Mahomes, and Herbert in some order off in front of me, I wouldn't even hesitate to just take Prescott and call it a day. I mean, that would be my approach. But I think you could get more. So, I mean, and then we're talking Superflex startup. So, as I sort of look at this, though, the Kyler thing gives me a lot of pause, and there's just enough there. Do I think he's going to go play baseball tomorrow? No. I mean, ultimately, you can't walk away from $150 million or 9 figures guaranteed. But
he could definitely walk away earlier than we think because, hey, he's getting tired of it. If he has some injuries, and he's like, hey, I was good at baseball too. This isn't like exactly a Michael Jordan experiment sort of thing, right? I I want to go try this. He was a first round pick. He was a first round pick in baseball. Now, in a few years, he's probably going to be past the point of legit progressing through the baseball ranks and, playing the majors and things like that. But, everyone's wired a little differently. I would put that at non-zero is all I would say. And for almost every other quarterback in the NFL, it's absolutely 0. It's dead set 0.
Right.
That dial has a weight on it. It's just it will not move from.
Except Joe Burrow's going to go play in the NBA apparently. Or
apparently dropping dimes.
Do you think? I mean,
Joey buckets.
Right. The market would be robust for Murray if he were to hit the trade market in the NFL. I mean, I think you have a whole bunch of teams that he would be a ceiling raiser for them. Which would be interesting. Like again, if he and Arizona have a divorce, like it's not, he will have a market other play a robust.
This is probably a bunch of nothing. I still don't know what the whole social media thing is, but the likelihood. I mean, Kirk Cousins and again Matthew Stafford getting out of Detroit. I mean, these are rare scenarios. Rare. Right. So that's why with free agency, I always struggle to put together the entirety of a list of players not currently under contract for the next year because you have some restricted situations. You always have the franchise tag usage, and typically those players don't get out of town. Typically.
Right.
So you always have to have that lens of like, yeah, this list of 5, 6, 7 big names at a certain position, 1 or 2 may get out of there. Right. 1 or 2 may actually shop around and have options a la, Corey Davis or Allen Robinson or whatever it is, may get into that sort of environment.
Right.
All right. Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 30 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And we got some trades this week. FFPC is always active. People trying to move and shake with that cut down in the early offseason. Got to clear your IR. So there are consolidations to be had, but teams looking ahead to this coming year. I want to start with an interesting one and get your thoughts on it, because FFPC, shallower, a little different of a beast. And this was in the one quarterback variety, and a team that's rebuilding, known, looking to retool. Does that mean they haven't made the playoffs for 2 years, 1 year? I don't know what that means, but they are a rebuilding environment. They traded the 108 and a 23 second on the early side for Darren Waller. So what do you think about rebuilding an FFPC? What does that actually moniker mean? Does it mean something different? Plus, what do you think about the value here for Darren Waller?
I think rebuilding means that you should be competing in 2022. And I think especially in that format, right, there's no, it's shallow enough. And the rosters, it's tough to get a huge edge over the field that isn't subject to a lot of variance at a 20 man that you have to cut to 14. There's just not that much of a spread that can really open up in that outside of extreme circumstances. So you should be trying to compete every year outside of some unforeseen circumstance. You have Watson and, Akers and, McCaffrey go down, right? I mean, then that's something that could harm you. But otherwise, I think going into a season, you should be competing. I like this this was one quarterback. I really like this for Waller. This is a difference maker at a non-difference making cost. Give me
and shallow. It's all about difference makers, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, get a guy at tight end that, now you have someone that's an anchor, and you have something to build on. And Waller is coming at a discount of those top 5, 6 tight ends. I mean, he's one. I think Kelsey is potentially another one where you say there's value to be had here, especially over the next couple of years. And with shallow rosters, if there is erosion, on the earlier side of a trade like this, it doesn't hurt you as much as if it was a 30-man, tight end, 2-point tight end, and kind of environment, deeper rosters. I mean, that hurts a little bit more because of the fact that pick, can provide value as well. So yeah, I think a later first plus a second. Seconds are, are you getting a similar player to a third rounder? I think you have to be really careful about having too much allegiance to those second rounders when you make them as well.
Would Chad from 5 years ago do this deal? Would Chad be on the pick side of this 5 years ago?
Would I be trading Darren Waller away because he's too old? I don't know. 5 years ago, 7 years ago, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean,
because I would be like, I would like to say
I was savvier than that, but yeah, man, Hector the Collector for certainly, and I still love picks, but I more like the utility of the picks more than maybe making every single one of them.
Yeah.
All right,
and this is like the perfect way to use the pick, right? Like we talk about utility of the picks. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the utility of the pick is for this particular circumstance. Like, hey, look, there's
and also playing FFPC a few years. It's knowing that you, like, let's say at 108 you draft a wide receiver. Congratulations. Like, so you drafted one, and if they don't finish in the top 45 or 50 in year one, you're sitting around, you got questions.
Right.
You got questions, you're getting scratchy, and you're like, and we know managing those teams, you get into in season. If you got more than about 5 wide receivers, you're like, I don't know about this. Where's the ointment? I don't like this. So that's what I know now. And so knowing that 108, you're sitting there, you don't have a running back of choice, it's tough. And then what position are you taking? You're not taking tight end this year. Quarterback, not an FFPC. Sorry. And that's it. So it probably is a wide receiver. I don't know. So you almost need to trade it for a veteran, and you need to find a deal like this.
Right.
So we got 12-team Superflex. How about Cooper Kupp being traded for Russell Wilson and Travis Etienne?
That's a lot, right? I mean, that basically puts Kupp at a first-round valuation. Pretty close.
He did finish wide receiver 1-1-1 this year, so setting records. A lot of people think he could be the NFL MVP. So
it's
This is certainly getting a good haul.
Yeah, certainly I think you have to take the Russell Wilson side of this.
Okay,
you have to take the Russell Wilson side of this.
And how much of a
Etienne? You've got multiple outs,
right? How much of a factor is Kupp's age? If you were 26, does that change what your answer is or how quickly you set it? Is it because he's going to be 29?
I mean, just positionally, right?
Okay.
I mean, position.
That's the
If
bigger
you
part of
have
it. If this is AJ Brown that just did what Cooper Kupp did, you would have the same answer.
right. I mean, yes, yeah. I mean, I think it might be a little bit different if it was, would I take Justin Jefferson or Russell Wilson? Maybe that's a different
Well, you
discussion.
certainly don't have the insulation because what
Correct.
we know is Cooper Kupp needs to kind of keep doing that in order to not have a giant fall of flexibility for market value and frankly just to fall. I mean, we saw what happened with Mike Evans, right? Mike
Yes.
Evans is what, is it 2 seasons removed from his big time 2 seasons removed from his top 5 finish, and we're seeing what's happened. I mean, he's out near wide receiver 20 or so. So Cooper Kupp does not have a lot of wiggle room, and yet right now he gets the pass, the big pass, because he finished at wide receiver 1, and he's inside of the top 8 or so. But if he even finishes at wide receiver 8 or 9, he's going to fall 10 spots, right? Minimum, maybe 15.
Right.
So because he's going to be 30.
Right.
How many guys at 30 can hang on? Hopkins, he's great. Keenan Allen, he's great. Look where those guys are this offseason. So yeah, that's a big part of it. Not that you have to be insulated everywhere. I get it, but Russell Wilson, and you add Etienne to that, you have a lot of, like you said, multiple outs. Russell Wilson's going to be around and viable for much longer than Cooper Kupp, and it's a premium position. So that to me is a really nice haul, and you're helping your team. Unfortunately, it comes at the cost of an anchor wide receiver for now. But there's other ways to do this deal. I mean, you could have got Russell Wilson maybe and Mike Evans. I mean, if you really wanted to like stay in the wide receiver game, there's other pivots within that position to help yourself out too.
I think Etienne's like Etienne's an awesome bet at that cost because that's a huge that's an upside.
Now, what do you consider this cost? Like, do you consider this as like Russell Wilson and like a random 22 first kind of equivalency? Is that kind of?
I mean, I think Etienne's worth more than a random 2022 first. I doubt we're going to get enough in this class that would be on the level of first round running back quality. Just again, I'm still
higher on the food chain at first.
Right, right. I'm still pledging off rookie analysis until after Valentine's Day, so I got a week. But
I don't even know who's in the class.
There's people asking me questions about players. And I was like, I've never heard of that person before. Ask me in March.
I don't know. What team are they on?
Right.
D1, 2, or 3?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, I think like this is a great shot for because there's you could win this multiple ways. Like you could win this with Etienne being a top 8 guy. Like if that happens, this is
you can win it with either guy. That's the thing.
Right.
And it doesn't mean Cooper Kupp falls off. Obviously, if Cooper Kupp sustains an injury or finishes at wide receiver 14 this next year, like you're probably going to win the deal. I'm not going to say independent of what happens because there's other moving pieces, but you're going to win that deal many, many times out of 10.
It's a great trade.
But even if Cooper Kupp is still great, that you could still win it, more than 5 times out of 10.
Yes.
Which is what I like.
Yep.
All right. Last one here. FFPC and Superflex, we got a 23-second for Jameis Winston.
FFPC Superflex?
Yep. So obviously the assumption is he would make your cut because you're trading for him at this point. Yeah, you better keep him. And I would say 3 is like the max quarterback number you can really afford to keep. 4 becomes diabolically difficult.
Yeah.
But so if Winston's your 3, I don't think at this point in the offseason it's a bad bet to make.
Yeah, I mean, if that's right, I think there's different ways to fix quarterback. I think that's one of them, right? Take a shot on a guy that can make a difference at a low cost, and I think that's a good bet. I mean, I think I would say you also need to scale this to your problem, right? So if you're trying to fix quarterback 1 by doing this, that wouldn't be, if you don't have a good quarterback, a top 10 guy, and this is a quarterback 2 issue or something like that. I mean, then you have to try better. But if you're trying to, take a shot at an upside quarterback 3, I don't hate it. I guess my response to this would be to make sure in your team build that whatever you're doing at quarterback is actually addressing the problem. And so without seeing the roster and the layout of the league, I can't say for the specific one, but that would just be my general advice. And I think at this price, it's fine for Winston. He's not going to go higher than, I don't think he'll be more valuable than this at any time between now and much of the offseason. I just don't think people are going to give 2023 first for him at any point until he gets a starting job that's actually has security.
Yeah, the one thing I would also reiterate is with picks in FFPC, running backs especially are kind of where you take those bets. Or, we talked about what was that draft we did where we took a shot on who was it in the last round? Was it a tight end or a quarterback?
Cam Newton.
That's right. Yeah. And the thought process was, well, we'll see if he has a job
really quick.
by August or September, when we have to actually cut down and set a lineup and follow cut downs and all those types of things. So you want to take those, a Rob Gronkowski type bet. Is he going to come back and play, or whatever, those types of storylines. And so a second round pick, a fourth round pick, and yes, they differ, but basically just having them and be able to take voluminous shots on running back, lack of clarity, depth charts on maybe having a primary backup, or, is this tight end, going to get traded, or those types of bets. Cam Newton as another example. So that's just an ancillary strategy point I would put out there for FFPC is you want quick clarity, and to keep in mind, you take these shots on later day 2 wide receivers or day 3 anybody, and you're just not going to feel good about those picks because the likelihood you have clarity by the time you're cutting down and doing waivers and all those things. It's even if you think 25 or 28 is a tight turtleneck around your neck, just try FFPC, and it is so tight you're gonna not be able to breathe at 20. All right, let's talk about some quotes from the Dynasty Forum. I do want to remind you that signing up for that email update from Joe Bryant. They usually take coming up, I think it's in late February or March, a little bit of a hiatus, but you still are going to get some news as needed on the NFL free agency front. But injury situation, you got an Alvin Kamara situation we're tracking. So you want to have all of those situations in the daily email update from Footballguys, and that's at the right corner of the homepage at that free email update. So the quotes from the Dynasty Forum this week, and I'll start out with a pretty specific one, which is, I like Elijah Moore, but I can't get past the Jets thing mentally. So what do you think about situation, the stink of some of these franchises that are just tough to trust? Jets are the one of the moment here with Zach Wilson, but also just the Jets have not been a producer of fantasy confidence for quite a while.
You are until you aren't. Right. I mean, this is, I don't really believe that.
Are you saying if Zach Wilson were Patrick Mahomes, that it wouldn't matter what color the uniform is and where they play?
Right. The Bills, everyone hated the Bills offense until Josh Allen was good. And now, now he's.
I thought you were going to say till Ryan Fitzpatrick was good.
Oh,
so Tyrod Taylor was sneaky decent.
Yeah. But I mean, through that whole, for 20 years, it was, you'd get guy drafted. Diggs was an instant, he sucks in fantasy because he's going to the Bills, right? I mean, that was the instantaneous hot take response.
This is your JP Losman Bills.
Right. This is your, yes. So, I mean, I don't think the market thinks that. The market's like all in on Elijah Moore. I mean, he's a top 20 guy in cost. I mean, that's very aggressive. That's aggressive for, that would be aggressive if he was the number 2 in Kansas City, let alone, the most expensive wide receiver for the Jets. I wouldn't get that far, but I think we're bad at situation. We're particularly bad at situation in February. I
will clarify one thing. The situation thing, mm-hmm. I will say that it's not super difficult. Like basically my extent of doing situation, especially for wide receivers, is what tier quarterback do you have, or what do you project for this coming year? And if Zach Wilson doesn't get to tier 1 or tier 2, which is top half NFL, then things get pretty tough, from an upside standpoint, even if Elijah Moore is the number 1, for that team. So, and is Corey Davis going away? No. I
Mhm.
mean, he started off strong and then he was injured a little bit, and Elijah Moore kind of came on as rookies typically do mid-season, later season. And there's already some decent projections, like the Jets aren't done. Denzel Mims has not worked out, and we don't know about Crowder. So they might be in the wide receiver market again, or the tight end market, but competition for targets. And like you said, it's early. It's February. We're probably not going to be great at projecting what does August look like.
Right.
But I do think Elijah Moore is a tough wide receiver in the sense that, does he look like an alpha? Not that, today's NFL looks a little different than maybe a decade ago in terms of maybe what we think that is or what that has to be. But the fact that he showed promise, he's certainly on the optimistic track post year one, but yet in today's dynasty, people tend to overcook that and be like, oh, he's going to be great. He's
Top
already
20
great.
wide receiver.
Now, yeah. And so that's the thing of like, I mean, he's got to cut how he finished last year in half to sort of equal that projection or sentiment. And that's tough. I mean, you got to go from the 30s to the teens, and there's a lot of competition in that position. So I just, that's the part that gets me of just, so you're doing that with every Dick and Harry, in year 1, year 2, year 3, and they all can't do it. They all can't. And when you say that there's just a lot of these hired guns that are older, that have been there, done that, it's like, step aside, Sonny. Like you were in freaking middle school when Mike Evans was having 1,000-yard season in the NFL. Like, so have fun with that. So, and they don't have, it's not like Keenan Allen. It's like, well, I got Justin Herbert. What do you got? I have Zach Wilson. Yeah, that's not the same. That's not the same.
Yeah, and I think you could separate out as well, like the Elijah Moore conversation might be different than the the generic situation conversation, right? Because I think he himself is just too expensive for a litany of reasons that have nothing to do with who his quarterback is, right? He hasn't done it yet, and we're making him a top 20 wide receiver. That's a glaring mistake. Add into that, you emphasize the quarterback concerns as well. I would say, if you told me he was going to have 150 targets, I wouldn't really care who's throwing him the ball. The problem is you don't usually get that with bad quarterbacks. That's kind of where in the rub of that is. I'm much more of he needs the targets guy, and I don't so much care who that is. It just can be really tough to get the targets when the quarterback's not good. So I think it's a little bit of chicken and egg issue there as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting debate. He's an avoid for me at his cost, but for a variety of reasons.
Yep, agree there. All right, we've got you don't get bad by making good trades.
You don't get bad by getting.
They were so I believe the trade that was referenced.
The background.
This was the classic, like, and this is, I think I'll call it second level. It's a 200 level college dynasty class that we always talk about. How can I get high upside for the future if I'm generally a good team? My picks are generally not going to be on the higher side of the round. How do I get picks that are high? Well, you've talked before, you go out more years. You can, people overstate their own position, own prospects. And a guy that thinks it's a late first can turn into 101 just by some injuries and maybe making a bad trade and a few bad lineup decisions. You never know that. But I think this was using their first, which looks later in the round. And I think they traded Cordero Patterson, and they got a team that projects on the earlier side. And it was sort of in the vein of, well, of course, this is a bad team, because if they make bad trades, if they made good trades, they wouldn't still be a bad team, was kind of the sentiment.
Yeah. I mean, I think
they gave up a potential 101 or 103 or, just, again, big upside for a team that is good. And you gave it up for Cordero Patterson.
Right.
That possibility.
Yeah. That I agree with. I mean, you can, you look.
If you're not a good team, you definitely have to hold on to your own picks. Like, that's just not. Unless you're getting a cornerstone guy that's going to be there for you for a bigger window. I mean, you cannot And yet, you know what? The vultures are going to come out, though. That's all anyone's going to want. They're going to try to get your first. But what that means is it still may be an environment where you could win by trading it, but you got to get the haul, and it has to be the right haul, and you have to be selective, and you have to be patient.
Right.
And I don't think trading it for Cordero Patterson in early February is probably the way to do that.
If you're trading a 2023 first, and again, people love themselves some 2023 first, so
Jordan's already scouting that class.
It's no, I'm not. But
I'm not familiar with the 22 class. That's because I've already moved on to the 23 class.
But if you like, a good rule of thumb on that is if you're going to trade a future pick, it better be for a top 30 guy, right? That'll avoid the Cordero Patterson issue, right? That'll avoid
player.
Some of the, like, give me a guy, and like I got one of those for Damian Williams. I got a future first for Damian Williams after that. It ended up being 101, right? Like 2 years out. If you can, I'll do that, right? That is a trade to do, to be on the selling side where you're getting it first for a non-top 30 guy. And not a non-core quarterback, right? You sort of look at those and what those deals are. They're random and out into the future, but that's a really easy way to not make these mistakes, right? Just sort of like, if I'm not getting a top 30 player, I'm not including this, and just make it that simple and sort of hold yourself to that. Say it out loud, say it like a woosah, say it out loud, and you'll be, I think you can sort of refrain from making that bad decision.
There can be honestly, you could probably write about 5 rules in Dynasty, but to actually follow them is the biggest challenge. Not writing them, not having them on your desk or wherever you need it. It's the actual, when it comes up, when the situation arises. That's kind of like, we can say it's easy to, just be responsible. Always take an Uber, and nothing good. What is the grandparents' phrase? Nothing good happens after 10 or 11 or midnight or whatever the threshold people put.
4:30 a.m. if you're
it's easier to it's easy to say, but it's like, well, it's a Vegas vacation. No, but this is Bob's birthday. I mean, this is his 40th. Well, come on. We just won the golf tournament. Like, we're going out. You can make, but look at your list, right? Nothing good happens after 11. Well, not this 11, right? No, they're talking about a different time zone. No, that's Pacific time. That's Pacific time 11. So, all right, last one. This one, unpack a little bit. There's 3 or 4 things in here. So, with a lack of human assets, that's an interesting one. So on a dynasty team, you have human assets. And then, I would imagine that's not sans picks. The actual human ones. Picks aren't human at a point. They're kind of computer. So with a lack of human assets and a boatload of picks for 2023, I don't see how a 111 or 112 pick in 2022 would help me more than the upside of Gabriel Davis.
So
Gabriel Davis was about 2 pages, Jordan, of the Dynasty trade thread for the Shark Pool over the past week. Gabriel Davis is white hot, and what they were saying is, I already have a lot of future picks, so I'd rather take the better shot in Gabriel Davis. He's a known human asset, as opposed to yet another rookie pick for this coming year, and it was a late one, like 111 or something.
I mean, you could probably use.
Are you following the human assets part?
I get it now. Now you get it. I thought we were talking about like signals intelligence.
Unpack it exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't. That wouldn't matter to me. It would be, is Gabe Davis
too many
worth
picks.
a 111?
He's saying he has too many picks.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I'd be cautious about saying I don't think you can have too many, but I mean, just because you have too much money doesn't mean you should spend it on, pink flamingos to put in your lawn, right? Like you can have money, you can have it in savings, and you can not spend it on stupid stuff too, right? Again, I like Gabe Davis. I don't think he's probably going to be the reason why your dynasty team wins.
But you could also trade 111 and 104 and get Tyreek Hill maybe, or like but just shop around. Like
Right.
what I don't like is some of these trades. You just see people. It seems to they get pigeonholed because someone came to them about a trade and they had Gabriel Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's 10 other teams
Right.
in a 12-teamer that have other players.
Right.
So you can explore those as well. Like if he had 6 first-rounders this year, like even if it's like a 24-man roster, and you're just like, well, I got 7 first-rounders next year, 5 or 6 this year. I don't have a very good team. You know, I have a lack of human assets. I say that all the time. Be like, I got a lot of picks, but not a lot of humans on my dynasty team. We've done that kind of a startup draft before, right? You just draft a bunch of non-human assets, and you're just like, I'll figure it out. I'll get the humans later. So, but yeah, like we've said before, I mean, 111 could get you Keenan Allen. It could get you, it could get you a lot of veterans. So you might not be contending right now, but you could trade if you wanted to as an experiment. I mean, you could trade all your picks away this year. Oh, let me keep all the 23 ones. Let me build a contending team right now.
Right.
And then guess what? I can get a lot younger next year because I have all those picks and I can make some of those. So,
yeah. The other thing too, someone reached out to me in a similar question about, hey, I've got 5 picks, should I just keep going in the tank? Try and win right now and just see what happens. And I have seen, I was looking around and doing some other, some writing work and stuff on some trades. And I'll tell you, Dak Prescott right now, like you kick in that 111 and include a 2023 first, and you get yourself a supermax quarterback. And it might not take much more than that. It depends on the league, but I have seen an outrageously low price on Dak Prescott. And all of a sudden, you just fixed a huge issue on your team. Do something similar, include the 111 and go out hunting for Deshaun Watson trade, right? Like, again, you want to make yourself better, right? Don't go on the fringes and Gabe Davis isn't going to change the outcome of your team. Spend your time and
don't
your
cross your fingers and like hope
Right.
it's 23 overall in the NFL draft Sam Howell. Like,
Right.
don't think that's. I know you don't know who that is, Jordan, but
no, I know he's the guy that threw the horrible interception in week 1 last year. No, I remember him. But no, I mean, if
they think that's going to maybe fix their problem.
No,
I'm weak at quarterback. Well, yeah, you can use it so many ways. And I think not utilizing it in let me trade a marginal guy, a guy that has some buzz, plus my, later first rounder. Let's put all that together. Let's get one guy that we actually feel good about starting next year and for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would, and you have the assets to make your team better, right? And this would be one of those situations where
it's a puzzle.
Be honest with yourself. When are you trying to compete? And if the answer is 2024, I think that's the wrong answer. I just wouldn't advise you to do that.
Yeah. The thing is, I think I always say, the truly dominant teams, but I would say there's more really, really good teams than there are categorically bad teams, because the categorically bad ones, and that's why I always hesitate. Like on my trade calculator, it's like there's a setting for rebuilding, and I almost feel like taking it away because, and I even wrote that in the description that there should be. It really is. There's not one in every league. There isn't. Like, that's not how prevalent this is. Of like, this isn't the year, and it really is looking ahead beyond to Y+1, because it probably. I mean, if I was just spitballing, maybe there's one in every other league, every third league. I mean, you're talking about 3%, 5%. But the point is, like you just said, 95% of teams. And if you're listening to Dynasty shows and you're digging and you're trying to self-analyze and improve and doing all this stuff, listening to shows 52 weeks a year, you're probably not in that subset.
Right.
Unless you purposefully took over a horrific orphan project that is bad. And I will say, I think if you play in a Devy league, it could be easier to have a truly bad team. If it's a deep roster league, the more twists and turns, if you have like triple flex and you're dying at quarterback, there are specific situations that could maybe bump that percentage up slightly, but it really isn't much. So the whole rebuilding branding of a team and a roster is not applicable in even one team per league, or maybe even one every 2 leagues. So I really, it just bothers me to almost mention that phrase, or like when someone says, I'm rebuilding. Well, I mean, we're all rebuilding. It's January.
Right.
We get it. Like, it's the off season. You're not setting a lineup. You have no record. Everyone's 0-0. I get that. But the whole because I always say, let me see your team. The first thing I say is list your 5 to 8 best players.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and every time it's like they list them. I'm like, oh, you can win with that.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you a story right now on how that wins.
Right.
Or how that makes the playoffs. I mean, whether or not you win is,
especially if you have like a couple, and I've been doing some research this off season already. It's like, if you have a couple of really good players, like, you would be surprised about how far that can drag you. And especially in Superflex if they're quarterbacks, right? I mean, they we've talked about this. I think we've talked about it on the show. If like I had Mahomes and Allen in a league, like, they dragged me all the way home. Like, again, I added along the way, but they dragged me to, I think I finished second in the league in points, and I had a lot of problems at other spots along the way, but I could have played replacement level and made the playoffs with those two, right? I mean, and if you can do that on your team, and if you have, this person sounds like they have 6 picks in the next 2 years, right? You start spending those.
We know you can get 6 auto start players for sure. Even if that's 7 through 12, you can get 6 auto start players.
Yeah.
We just outlined that 108 and a little bit more got Darren Waller.
Right.
We know you can get 2 auto start wide receivers in that range.
Right.
I mean, so if you have anything right now, I mean, if you just have a little bit of human asset,
totally,
and then you add those trades, I mean, So I just,
I would encourage you to do that, because you'd be surprised it's cheaper and quicker than you think. And I, at a time at this point last year, I was doing it. It was like this week. Might have been today is the anniversary of when I did this. I started to do it. Went through trade. I think I made 8 or 9 trades throughout the year. Just flipping things all over the place, and it ended up being the highest scoring team in the league. Right, and it went from the worst scoring team in the league to the highest scoring team in the league, and 12 months. And right, it just took work, right? But I'm not going to kick this down the road forever. I'm going to use these assets now, and I'm going to win. And, and I was able to do that and get a buy, right? So those things can happen, but you have to be in that mindset and be willing to play the game in a way that allow you to win, right? But that takes a conscious effort, not just, hey, I want to play, I want to play it on the line forever, right? You're playing a different game. You're not really trying to win. You're trying to play a different game. And you got to kind of understand that, would be what I would say.
Yeah, because I'm kind of looking back to last year's draft class. And if you say, oh, I had a later first, and it's like, well, it depends what you picked. I mean, if you picked Mac Jones, did he help you win this past year? Not really. He was sort of.
If you used him as a trade asset, right? I mean,
right.
That's what you had to do, right?
Yeah, right. I actually traded him just last week, in one of my Superflex leagues. I remember drafting him at 112, I think, or he was going that 111 to 201 sort of zone. But is he going to help you win? Or if you drafted in that late first, early second, Rashad Bateman, did he help you win? Obviously, if you had Jalen Waddle, the answer was yes. But there's a lot of answers that are a maybe / no. So, I just think it's if that's how you utilize the pick a year ago, and spring is always eternal, and it's always about promise. So I would say the next 2-3 months, just remember that, not to be Captain, Papa Pessimism here about all the prospects, but just remember, I mean, it can be a slow burn to get them all the way to fantasy starterhood.
Yeah.
And the old guys, they've been there, done that. So
yes,
just have pause. And I think what Jordan said is super, super applicable to have on that five rule list of just why not contend now?
Right.
And I would say just, if you have a pick, trust me, a lot of your league will want the pick.
Mm-hmm.
So go around, be aggressive, and don't be afraid to ask. Because you can get some really good profiles where you're like, oh yeah, they were just a few years ago, they were going 101 or 103 in their draft class. They've produced well, looking at you, Josh Jacobs. And now it's like, you might be able to get them for a late first.
David Montgomery, right? I mean, it's just crazy.
So you have to be able to ask. And a late first has gotten you more in the past 18, 24 months than I can ever recall it getting. We're not talking about in season. We're talking about off season and resetting the clock here, but making your team better for 2022. When are you next competing? Week 1, 2022. set your calendar. Write it in. Have an alert pop up on your phone.
Yes.
Contending. There it is. I'm contending today.
Yes.
That'd be funny if you wrote it on. You have like a fantasy commercial and it's like written on the mirror in the bathroom. It's like, I'm a contender. just right there. You have to read it every day.
Yeah. Just wear a shirt. Right, wear a shirt.
Exactly.
Around. Yeah.
And it's written backwards, so every time you can look into it, you're like,
yeah.
I'm a contender.
Yeah.
That's
right
right.
on your bathroom.
I am contending. I am contending. Actually, Jordan, I want to ask you one thing before we close up.
So are we going to talk about your coffee? Like someone asked me, if there's one person I could have coffee with in person, it'd be you.
Okay, let me say, how long did we know each other when we hung out in Mobile?
Maybe
a year? It was relatively fresh at that point in time. Mm-hmm. That was back when Jordan was a runner, not a biker. That was funny. Mm-hmm. But so what did you think when I did not? I was like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like when we went into Starbucks, you were like, you were like in your safe haven home. Like that was like a bird in a nest.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
It's funny because
what does that look like to a Starbucks frequent flyer? When someone goes in and doesn't know what they're looking at.
For me, it was fine. Like I didn't think anything. If you don't drink coffee, you wouldn't know. And honestly, I had been, I had been in Starbucks before I really knew what I was doing, ordering stuff, and it was intimidating. So I didn't really think anything of it. I just think the funny
ask questions? What did you do? How did you gain that knowledge? Did you ask, or did you just figure it out?
A lot of Starbucks, so they were able to like kind of explain it to me. And I ended up drinking a lot of like sugary stuff at first. Now I just drink a lot of the coffee instead.
Straight potting soil.
Yeah, and just be like, can you just stick it out? But I like it, an Americano, if you will, and which is just espresso, basically black and water.
Wait, isn't that the really tiny ones?
No, that's just an espresso shot. An Americano is espresso with water in it. So
it's diluted down to make it bigger.
Yeah, and it functions like a
coffee talk with Chad and Jordan.
Yeah, but I want to see the reason I want to have coffee.
You see me quote unquote on coffee.
Yes,
you're probably a little jealous because you're like, oh, I remember those good times. I remember there was it New York City or something? I hung out in a Starbucks, but it was like the most productive 2 hours ever.
Yeah.
Like I was wired.
Were you high on caffeine just by osmosis?
I didn't blink for at least 90 minutes. and I swear I got I wrote like four or five articles. I was like knocking out all this stuff, and it's like I did 3 days of to-do list in an hour and a half. Like what's happening? I'm wired. And I know that if you do that every day, it probably doesn't have the same effect.
Right.
Like, the reason caffeine affects me is because I kind of slow play it, if you will. So
yes, yeah.
But so the question I was going to say, what do you think about this concept? Because the idea came about of a discussion of if you could never watch the NFL again, or you could watch the NFL but you had to give up all fantasy ventures, then that push pull. And then I came up with this solution. I was like, what if you had like 2 people and you got every other year off? What if, Jordan, this year we said you're going to do all of Chad's teams? So I have no say, no knowledge, and you are just going to run those teams from, once it opens back up, January, whatever. And then I just like check out. Who knows what's going to happen? You don't check with me. You don't ask permission or whatever, or ask for forgiveness. And, but then what happens next year is I do the same for you.
And you
I get all my teams back, but now I run all of your teams and you get the whole season off. What do you think would happen if you had no fantasy team managing responsibilities for a whole football season?
I don't know, man. It would be
weird, first of all, right?
I wouldn't watch much football.
Yeah, you really wouldn't.
No.
You wouldn't watch the Bills games.
I'd probably watch the Bills games, but I mean, I don't know.
If you can see how Jordan is going to scream, it looks like you're eating something unappetizing right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like this is not appealing. It tastes chalky.
It doesn't. I mean, I want to. It's funny because I do joke that
so you'd be watching. You would know that you're like, oh, well, I had a lot of Josh Allen, but did Chad trade him away?
Right.
I might not have him anymore. I haven't touched base with those teams in 8 months.
Right. Right. I joke that there's subscribers that would, that I could just, hey, just take care of you guys make better trades than I can figure out how to make. So you guys go ahead and just take care of my stuff, and I'll just, I'll
They're
work
also
on
in
the
different
theory
leagues
stuff.
and they have different cachet. See, that's the other thing. It's like
Right.
they're not dealing with the same elevator door shutting sometimes, and the
Right.
premium that has to be paid sometimes.
Right. So,
Well, if Jordan wants him, he must really want him. That makes me want him more.
But I play under a pseudonym. I don't know about you. I play under a pseudonym in
I still kind of do that.
Leagues.
I have a philosophy: first 12 months. I do a first 12 months thing, and then I generally kind of start flipping over. So if you but let me ask you this: would that just be like, well, I don't want to lose control? Do you think your teams would be notably worse?
I mean, if I handed them to you,
would it be weird doing the analysis stuff if you didn't have the teams that you were actually action planning with?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
You're giving out all this advice, and you're like, well, I technically am doing no teams. So
right.
I'll do teams next year, but not now.
Yeah, I think you do want. Look, I think you want to take advice from people that are good at this. I don't think you have to necessarily be a great dynasty player to give advice, right? But I do think you want someone that's vested in.
People have been divorced 5 times, still give dating advice.
Right. But I do think you want, right, because you want the incentives aligned, right, and you want your sort of, you can do stuff in theory that's great, but in practicality isn't a winning strategy, right? And I think that there's a disconnect there that if you don't play, you might not necessarily catch on to. So I do think there is some of that that goes on. That you want people playing seriously that are giving advice and that you're listening to for sure. So, so it would be an interesting exercise. It's not one that I'd want to undertake, though. I can tell you that. I don't know if I could.
I don't know if I could do the whole. Don't know if I could do the whole kit and caboodle profile, like a portfolio. I don't know if I could do if I was in 40 or 35 or whatever. I don't think I could go 35 to 0. This is almost like the nicotine patch, right? You couldn't just go cold turkey. Let's go from 10 cigarettes to 8 to 4. I'll just do one in the morning, one at night, or one after dinner. Like, then we'll be down to 0. Like, I think I would almost do it that way of like, instead of 35, like, how about I do 25? And then, you manage the other 10, and then we'll swap C back, and then I'll do 10 of yours, But I do think it's an interesting concept of like unplugging, and if you have similar visions, that how does that work out? Of just completely, and then you literally would just look at the roster fresh. It'd be like it'd be like, imagine how interesting that sitting down at the computer and you go, what has happened with this team over the last 12 months? Let's look. Let's go back. Let's look at the transactions. What trades did he make? What pickups? How different is the roster than when I left it? How did they finish? What was the story there? Like, and you have no idea. It's like being dropped onto earth with having knowledge up until January 2022. And all of a sudden it's 2023. So anyway, food for thought. Don't think anyone will ever do it, but we'll see how that goes. All right. So we had a divergence there at the end, but in this episode, we talked a lot about the FFPC format. We talked about contending, and rebuilding is really a relic phrase. It doesn't apply to very many people. Cooper Kupp, that was a good discussion as well. And of course, at the top of the show, talking about Mr. Kyler Murray as one of the interesting profiles out there at a position where you frankly can't take a lot of long-term profile chances. I'm Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your dynasty leagues. Oh, rain alert. Nope. First shot in a week. Not even close. Oh, that felt.